Welcome back to hour number 2 of a special edition of the Inside Edge presented by Mike's Hard Lemonade. I'm Bob McElligott along with Jody, Shelley, and for this hour, we welcome in Jeff Rimmer and Jean-Luc Grand-Pierre as we've got so many things to talk about. It's just not going to be there's too much for two of us to talk about the rest of the way. So we just want to get into everything as we go along here. And let's just start again with the Blue Jackets news of the day. Jean-Luc, Alexander Wenberg was placed on waivers. The Blue Jackets are going to buy him out. I know it's been disappointing. I'm sure it's been disappointing for him. It's been disappointing for the team that he hasn't lived up to the performance level that he needs to be for the contract that he has had. How do you see this changing the Blue Jackets shipping out Alexander Wenberg?
Well, I think it gives them a little bit more room because we know they have to sign Pierre-Luc Dubois and they still have to sign Gavrikov and maybe bring in even more help. And now with Max Domi taking basically the same salary as Wenberg is due to make next season, they have their second line center. So all of a sudden, Wenberg becomes expendable as a third center. Listen, I love Alexander Wenberg as a person. I love him as a player. However, the Blue Jackets signed him to that big deal to produce offensively. They knew about his defense, but it's really hard to justify paying, $4.95 million a year for a strictly defensive forward. So I'm sure he'll be signed by another team within 48 hours of the buyout happening. It's too bad to see him go, but I think financially it made sense for the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more financial. I'm going to go to the expert here, Jeff Rimmer. I know he's going to break this down. But seriously, Jeff, I mean, when you look at what Wenberg does defensively, as Jean-Luc was saying, when you get to the third line, that's where you are talking about defense more so than offense. But that was the problem. The money puts him into an offensive role, and the way the salary cap is, and especially with a flat cap the next couple of years, that means that it just threw everything out of whack.
Oh, absolutely. And understand, he was paid almost $5 million on a year-to-year basis based on that one good season. He was never able to replicate it. Quite frankly, and I'm sure you guys will agree with me, a couple of hits that he took and concussion and a shoulder injury really made him a little bit gun shy. And I don't think he has ever come even close to playing at that same level. Now, a new lease on life, goes to a new team. It's a fresh start for him. We hope he does well. And I'm sure with so many teams needing centermen and for what they probably can get him for at this point on a buyout, I would think that, as Jean-Luc points out, in the next, 24, 48, 72 hours, I believe he'll be signed by somebody.
Yeah, he shouldn't have a problem finding a job. There's no question about that. And Jody, when you look at the list of names of guys that are available, whether it's somebody that was bought out like Alexander Wenberg, whether it was a restricted free agent that wasn't qualified, we talked about that there would be a lot of guys available this year that in a normal year wouldn't be available. And so far that's turning out to be the case, isn't it?
Well, it's crazy. I mean, and it's teams that have their self-implemented cap. The salary cap is $81 million for a while, but there's teams that are as low as $66 million because they don't want to spend more. They don't have operating costs to do so. So then you've got teams that are squeezed, and you've got all these players that usually get qualified automatically as restricted free agents, and they don't. And some of the list of names that has been thrown out there, organizational players available, could be available, like Patrick Laine, Johnny Gaudreau. Then you've got free agents like Mikko Koivu, veteran players. And you look at Koivu, Joe Thornton, Lundqvist. These are guys that are going to be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, if you want to tinker with your lineup in any way possible, there are going to be lots of options to do so. Pietrangelo is a defenseman that, he's a guy that's won a Stanley Cup, but he's also one of the top defensemen in the National Hockey League. He's going to be available just because teams have to fit all the contracts within their spending budget. And right now, then they project 3 or 4 years out with what they have. And right now, some teams are kicking themselves because they've got guys locked up in too big of contracts for too long. And all these pieces are coming out. So some interesting names. Steven Stamkos. Would you ever think that Steven Stamkos' name would be available from the Tampa Bay Lightning? But right now it is. So it's going to be a wild few weeks. Starts tomorrow with free agency, but just think about the teams that are sitting back with salary cap room and available to make some real big organizational shifts.
One of the interesting
sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
One of the interesting things for me is what happens to Marc-Andre Fleury. This is still a goaltender that certainly can help a team. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. I think he's capable of winning again. Pittsburgh certainly is one of the teams that's rumored to maybe even reacquire him. But the fact of the matter is, Las Vegas is in a crunch. Yeah, Jody mentions Pietrangelo. If Pietrangelo doesn't re-sign in St. Louis, he's a guy that could end up going to Las Vegas, but Vegas can't even pick his contract up. Taylor Hall's a free agent effective noon tomorrow. He can't go anywhere. Vegas is another team that's interested in him until they get rid of the contract of Marc-Andre Fleury. So far, they've offered a 2nd-round draft pick to take money and then perhaps flip him to another team. I understand the offer was made to New Jersey for a 2nd-round pick, take some money, and then send him to another team. That's not going to happen. They've really dug themselves a hole, have the Vegas Golden Knights, and it's going to be interesting to watch that one. And then after that domino falls, look at all the free agent goaltenders on the market. Who's going to end up without a chair to sit in? You've got Holtby, you've got Grice. What happens with Markstrom? What happens with Hudobin, who signed not signed, he's unsigned. They tried to sign him in Dallas. They couldn't come to terms with him as of now, and he's a free agent. Look at the way he played in the Stanley Cup playoffs. These next couple of weeks, if not days, are going to be very fascinating.
Hey, Jean-Luc, let's stay on the topic of goaltending here, because there has also been a lot of talk about the Blue Jackets goaltenders and Joonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlikins, and that, there's been reports that teams have been calling. But when I've been asked, my opinion has been, if they're going to move one of those guys, I don't think it's going to happen right now, just because of, listen to that list that Jeff read off to us and the number of guys that are available, guys that have to move before guys that you want to move, for crying out loud. But I also think that when this season starts, whenever that is, and we're going to be joined by Captain Nick Foligno a little bit later and talk about, that January 1st date that Gary Bettman mentioned the other day before the start of the first round of the draft. But when it starts, it's going to be a compacted schedule. And when you're playing a lot of games, I think this year, more than any year, you're going to have to use 2 goaltenders. The league's already going that direction anyway. You're going to need 2 guys. Do you think the Blue Jackets would be better off, even though you might be able to sell high with the Korpisalo based on playoff performance right now? Don't you think they'd be better off just to go with these 2 guys, let them play here this year? And by the end of next year, you're going to be able to figure it out, and maybe the market won't be so flooded.
I can't wait for his answer.
Well, for me, it depends on what you're getting in return. Just like the Josh Anderson, Max Domi trade, you need to give to receive. And for the Blue Jackets, if it makes sense and they receive like a high-scoring winger and they can do a package deal and let one of the 2 goaltenders go, I would do it. You said it yourself. The goalie market is flooded with goaltenders. Not all of them are going to get picked up at the salary they want to do. So you could go and pick up a backup, just like the Montreal Canadiens did. They pick up Jake Allen to back up Carey Price. I think for the Blue Jackets, if you get the right person in return and a team is interested, I say you let one go and you pick up someone else to back up Korpisalo or Merzlikins. That's my opinion.
Jody, you played with Henrik Lundqvist in your career. How weird is it going to be for you to see him wear a different uniform?
You know what? It's great. It's going to be like, you've seen some of the greats do it. Ray Bourque's done it. Wayne Gretzky's done it. It just comes to a time when you see guys like that shift. It'll be weird, but it'll be exciting to see the energy he brings to that locker room. He knows a couple of fellow countrymen there. Backstrom is there. There's some familiar faces. He'll be excited and maybe re-energized a little bit, because a guy like that who is a heart and soul Ranger, you hate to see him on the bench. And he was he didn't feel great about how it ended in New York. He'll always be one of the greatest Rangers ever in the hearts of New York City and the Ranger fans. But he's going to be rejuvenated. I think there's going to be some admiration there for that. I agree with Jean-Luc on that question about the goaltenders, because if you get a veteran goaltender to come in, and there's a lot available, maybe a guy who's won. Holtby could be a guy. I don't know. Quick. I always say Jonathan Quick, because I like the pedigree there. I like that the veteran guy can come in on the back half of his career, maybe, just play 30 games or so, and let Korpisalo or Elvis have the net. Whichever guy you stick with, they get confidence. They have a veteran guy to bounce it off. it's not such a competition, but it's more of a where you're mentoring the young goalie. I think there's so much value in that. So look for maybe something like that to happen because you do have an asset to improve in an area where they really need help, and it's in scoring. So I like that. When you have assets, when you're sitting at a pace of strength with defensemen and some young prospects, improve the team. That's what they always do. But the goaltending position, it's going to be a tandem for sure. You need it to win the Stanley Cup. But I think it could be a little bit benefited to get one of those horses out of there and bring someone in who's confident in being a second role guy.
Bob, I heard an interest.
Go ahead.
I'm happy that you agree with me, Jody, because it's kind of like real estate. There's so much inventory right now in the market with goaltenders that the price is going to come down. So those, the whole bees, they're not signing $6 million a year deal this season. It's not happening with the flat cap. There's going to be a lot of good deals on the goaltender side. So, with the Blue Jackets right now in this situation, I completely agree with you, and I'm glad we can agree to disagree, Jeff. But for me, if you can get the right player in return, I think you have to make the trade.
I was going to say there's an interesting rumor I heard this morning, and there are plenty of them out there right now. First, dealing with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He's given the Coyotes until tomorrow at noon to determine whether or not they're going to trade him or he's going to stay in Arizona. Two teams apparently are interested. One is Vancouver, maybe more interested, although the Coyotes like what the Boston Bruins have to offer. Here's the situation there. If Krug leaves, they need another defenseman, and they don't get Ekman-Larsson. The rumor is that they're talking to Calgary, and they may deal for Hannafin, and the player going the other way is Columbus's own Corrali. That's a player that Jody and I have talked about. If he's on a move, well, how great would it be to have Corrali, who's 1 year away from free agency? I guess he could always re-sign in Columbus, but how great would it be to have Corrali on this Columbus Hockey Club, especially the grit that he provides and that third line presence that he has had for Boston in the playoffs year after year.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. And do you find it odd that Oliver Ekman-Larsson is in Arizona and he's given them a high noon deadline? That's like a gunfight, isn't it?
It is.
Jeff Rumor.
Hey,
I just got to say, Jeff Rumor. I love it when you kick up the rumors. We usually do this at the back of the bus or on the plane or in the hotel. But here's what. I can't believe Ekman-Larsson is available. I think of the Coyotes. And Jeff, you got to talk to him during the All-Star game here. He is a great player. He's got an unbelievable skill set. He's perfect for that locker room. It's hard for me to get my head around this guy leaving the desert.
It's all about the money. It's all about the money, and the Arizona Coyotes are certainly hurting in that department, along with other teams in the National Hockey League, and they simply have to get rid of that contract. It's a long-term deal, and there's several years left, so it's a situation where he's going to tell them, you trade me by noon tomorrow, or I'm staying. And it's interesting because Arizona would like to deal him to Boston, although it seems that Vancouver's trying hard, and they can't even sign their goaltender Markstrom until they find out if they can get Ekman-Larsson. So it's an interesting time, as I said earlier. And boy, I'm going to have the Twitter going, the computer going, the television going, and any other conversations I can have along the way here, because this is Rumor Central right now.
Well, Jeff, let's go back to a guy you talked about a little bit earlier, in Taylor Hall. Speaking of Arizona, as we were with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, that's where Taylor Hall was playing. He's going to become a free agent. A lot of people are going to be interested in him. Where do you think he's going to wind up? And I have a problem figuring out whether or not it's worth paying this guy the amount of money it's going to take, quite honestly. What do you think?
Well, I think that with the situation such as it is financially, and the cap and the self-imposed caps the teams are going to put on themselves, I think that there may not be the number of teams and suitors that would really be love to have this guy in their lineup, all that interested. And it's interesting to note, this is not my rumor. Let me qualify this right now. This is coming from two guys that are so-called insiders north of the border. One of them is Darren Dreger. The other is Pierre LeBrun, who wrote a story in The Athletic that the Blue Jackets are on the list to talk to Taylor Hall. And from what I understand, tomorrow at noon, he's going to start Zoom conversations with those teams interested. And he's not at all opposed to signing a short-term contract, be it 1 year, 2 years, whatever. And I think that he hopes will entice more teams to get into the action. The Blue Jackets have indicated, Jarmo Kekalainen, who you had last hour, he said, we're always looking to make the team better. He indicated in the closing news conference that he had at the end of the season, they were looking for a centerman. He's obtained that in Domi. They'd like to find a goal scorer. Taylor Hall is there and available, and you don't have to trade anything for him. You can keep your 2 goaltenders, which would make me happy because, as Jody pointed out, you're going to need 2 goaltenders in a condensed season.
Jody, what about Mike Hoffman? That's another guy who's out there on the free agent list. And I ask you about him because, remember, he was in Ottawa, and then there were some issues, and then he goes to Florida. And, every time I think about Mike Hoffman now, I think about those 3 shots he took that were blocked by Vladislav Gavrikov. When he just peppered him with 3 one-timers on a power play. Where does a guy like that wind up, do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. He's been mostly in the East his whole career. I'd like to see a guy like that settle in somewhere, but here he is on the move again. Maybe he goes out west. He's a guy that'll be coveted with that shot. He's got a great skill set, and he's a player that'll probably settle in. I see him going out west. A team like Vancouver, they've got some things going on with their cap issues. Calgary's got to mix things up. Teams in Canada, Bob, they got to make the playoffs. The Montreal Canadiens, I know they're in the East, but they're a team now that has to push their chips in and make the playoffs. I mean, this has been long enough for the drought of a team actually getting in and doing some damage. I know, the league is all over North America, but, the Canadian market and the way the fans are up there, it's been a long time since they've had a real contender. So look for maybe one of these teams to push all in, and maybe Hoffman goes somewhere up there. I saw Corey Crawford, too, as another goalie. He just got bought out today. We forgot to talk about him. Strange career. He's had some strange injuries the past couple of years, but I tell you what, he's a veteran guy who's great in the locker room. So add him to that list.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of guy you were talking about, right? I mean, older guy, good pedigree, Stanley Cup rings.
Exactly, and a great guy. So that'll be interesting to see where he lands.
I was going to say Montreal's another team that apparently has some interest in Taylor Hall. The situation, talking to some people here in South Florida with regards to Hoffman, another free agent on that Florida list, another goal scorer is Dadonov. And I asked a couple of colleagues down here, I said, which, if you had your choice of the 2, which would you take? Interestingly enough, they said Dadonov. They said that he plays more of a 200-foot game. He gets a little more involved, and that's a guy that's on the free agent market as well. This is going to be, I'll say it again, awfully interesting here over these next few days.
Hey, Jean-Luc, how interesting is it to be in the position you are now? I mean, when you were playing and all this stuff was happening, that was one thing. You're more worried about yourself. Now you're overseeing all of this stuff. Is it exciting?
It's really exciting when you're looking at it from a 200-foot view and, listening to Jeff with dropping all the scoops on you. So I really like it. But honestly, guys, I like the free agent market this year. There's not much sexiness to the names beside Pietrangelo and Taylor Hall, but like that second tier guy, the Dadonov, the Hoffmans, these guys, I think if you can sign them to a good deal, right around, $3.5-4 million a year, and you can sign them to a fairly short deal. We're talking 2-3 years here. I think it's a good deal with the cap being where it is right now, because right now we're seeing a lot of teams that sign guys to 7-year contract, 8-year contract, and now they're 1 year, Matt Duchene, or 3 year into it, and they're trying to unload them already. So I think you have to be really careful when you're looking at guys, and I know how happy would all be to have Taylor Hall, but at what cost, right? Because you're signing him to a 7-year deal, all of a sudden he's in his mid-30s by the end of the deal, and we know what happened with the production. It usually declines. It usually doesn't go up, right?
And before we wrap this up, Jody, I want to ask you, as Jean-Luc just brought up a name of a former Blue Jacket there, and Matt Duchene, almost unthinkable that the Predators have even tossed around trying to, do something with him after they just signed him a year ago. And then there's another former Blue Jacket in Anthony Duclair, who went to Ottawa, had a great first half of the year this year, scored 20 goals, didn't do so hot after he was an all-star. But the fact of the matter is this guy's back on the market because his situation is really weird. He decided to represent himself and didn't accept the deal that the Senators had on the table, and now he's going to be looking for a job. I don't know if he's still going to be looking for himself or if he's going to go out and get some help to represent him. But, there's a couple of guys that it would be almost unthinkable months ago that either one of these names would even be floating out there.
And Anthony Duclair was such a great member of the Blue Jackets. He took a one-year deal to come here. He learned under Torts. He grew up. He went to Ottawa, another one-year deal, and really took off and settled in there. And I thought he found a home. I don't know why you would want to represent yourself. I think it's great to have a good advisor that's in there in the back channels, having the discussions and making sure that those things get done properly. He did that. I hope he knows what he's doing, and I want to see him settle in somewhere and sign a 3 or 4 year deal because he's a guy that you root for. And then with Duchesne, you know what? He was good when he was here. He did what he had to do. I kind of felt like at the end of it, he knew free agency was going to be a big ticket for him. He felt like he was going to be in Nashville. It seemed like it was going to be harmonious, no pun intended, because he's a music guy. And he wanted to be down there with the country and Western superstars. And it's great to see him on Twitter interact with all that. But if for his term to be done already, am I surprised? Yeah, I thought it would last 3 years. Here it is, only 1. So hopefully they can sort that out.
Well, I think Anthony Duclair at the least should call Jeff Rimmer and have him as somewhat an advisor.
Too expensive. Rimmer be way too expensive.
And you know what's funny? And I'm watching Jeff during this thing, and I'm watching Jeff when other people are talking, and I feel sometimes like he's involved in a presidential debate. It looks like he's making notes or something there while other people are talking.
Yeah, he's texting Duclair right now to see
right.
if he's interested in his service.
No, I'm going to
I know a guy.
Wait. You guys got it wrong. You had me wrong. I'm going for Taylor Hall. See if I can represent him. There's more bucks in that.
Yeah, well, you're definitely right. There is more bucks in that, no question.
That's right.
All right, well, that's our big roundtable segment. And, of course, plenty to talk about. And there are plenty of other guys that we didn't even get to talk about because that's how many people are going to be on this market. It's going to be really interesting to see not just how the Blue Jackets shake out when this is over, how all of the teams shake out when this is all said and done.